Welcome back to the Paperstac Podcast. My name is Rick Allen. This is Brett Burky, and we are back for another, not a knowledge drop from us. We figured you guys got tired of listening to us talk. We've actually brought somebody on, a CPA, an accountant that's going to answer some questions. I want to welcome you, Larry Pendleton. Thank you for coming on the podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, fellas. Looking forward to it.
This is going to be good because, I know I was wanting to reach out to you earlier in the year, but I was like, oh, he's probably super busy, going through all this stuff until about this time where he probably calmed down a little bit with all the taxes and stuff. So
no, man, now it's like all the people who filed extensions, he's just like right back into it. You get like a little break and then you're like, it's like a nonstop thing. I think it's like November you get to take off and then December and then it's like January fires it back up. Or you probably have end of the year stuff. So
probably true too.
Yeah, fortunately, the way we restructured the business now is that we do a lot, way more consulting throughout the year instead of just tax returns. So yes, it'll pick up with the tax filings, but we're in constant conversation with our clients all year long. We'll just say, here's what investment they're getting into, here's the tax implications, and then trying to align the two worlds together.
Yeah, my buddy's accountant, he always calls him, well, the first time he called it was like he was having his first like really good year, and he called him on like the 28th, and he was like, man, you need to spend like 140 grand or you're just going to turn it over. So you need to find some business expenses. So he was like, you're giving me this information now? We've got like 3 days and I got to go buy something. So he had to go buy a truck and some other stuff for his company, his business. So it was interesting. So Larry, tell us about your background, man. Tell us, you're in Norfolk, Virginia now. Are you born and raised there? How did you get into what you're doing? And, we'll start from there.
Yep. Born and raised here. I've always been into numbers since I was young. Really didn't know what accounting was until high school, where there was a teacher that was teaching it, and had the high school crush, so I took her class. Didn't work out with the teacher, but I got the accounting experience and just rolled that along through college, and just saw a need from it, especially my dad having an HVAC business. Besides cursing his football team, he always cursed taxes and doing accounting. So it was okay, I can help him out. But then as I gotten older, it's like, hey man, there's more and more people that need help in this arena, and I can see this is my flag I can plant where I can be of value to folks.
That's cool. How did you take it from doing the stuff with your dad to moving into more of the real estate space?
So after college, I joined a regional accounting firm up here, called Whitmer's, but PMears now, but was Whitmer's at the time, in Williamsburg, Virginia. And with the smaller firms, you get exposure to not just one side of the accounting world. You get to see tax, you get to see the audits, and then slowly starting to see that I really wasn't helping individuals. I was helping more large companies. But then as I started to branch out and do my own, create my own firm, PC Financial Services, we started to pick up various types of clients. So then you see a W-2 employee, and then you see a real estate investor, and the W-2 employee may make less money, but the real estate investor pays less in taxes.
Yeah.
So okay, I need to. So you start to figure out that the tax code itself is really made for business owners, business owners, and investors, primarily real estate investors in various aspects. So I knew the benefits of it. It was just, okay, how do I become an investor myself? And that was always a struggle for me until I got myself around the right people, certain partners that I still work with today, and then shifting our business. Let's just work with other real estate investors, since that's what we've been doing since the past decade of investing, but doing the CPA stuff for nearly a decade, or 22 decades now at this point.
Wow. Yeah. So it sounds like then your like primary focus and kind of what you're really passionate about is the real estate investment side, but how can we use the real estate investments to best, pay the least amount of taxes, right? Because everybody wants to save as much money as possible. Is that sort of your primary focus now?
Yes. There's a good balance of both, where you make your money where your main business is, but then you're using mostly tangible real estate to actually save on taxes, and build cash flow that way.
Yeah, so more of a tax strategist type of a play, where you're come up with strategies for the ways with the taxes. I saw, I of course I perused your Facebook, and I was like, a cash flow quadrant, eh? And I was like, okay. I was like, this guy, he's probably read the Rich Dad Poor Dad book there maybe once or twice.
Yeah. It's the second one with the cash flow quadrant
Cash flow quadrant,
really
yeah.
caught my attention, because yes, the E&S, like, they basically spend the most, but they also pay the most in taxes.
Right.
So it's that aspect, like, well, the wealth is always going to be on that right side of the quadrant, and they're saving the most in taxes, because, and really in any country that you're in, the code, the system itself is to encourage people to start businesses, stimulate the economy by putting money out there, not just working for yourself, but really helping the masses in various ways.
So what kind of real estate investments do you personally like? What's like the stuff that you're investing in right now?
Right now, right now, we still have some rentals that we currently have since we first started, long-term, short-term, and mid-term rentals. We're doing new construction here locally, just kind of identifying where the path progression is. And then since last June of 2023, once I heard about mortgage notes, and that just kind of took over my mind at that point. Like, that this makes the most sense from the investment standpoint.
What do you like? And believe me, I was there, right? That was in the real estate, and then I kind of bought a note by accident, and yada yada yada. Here we are. Like, what did you love about notes? You're like, man, I really like this over real estate.
As you can tell from my shirt, I'm really big on cash flow.
Cash flow,
yeah. Just that aspect of building cash flow, and to that point where it can fund your life. And that's the reason why I got in more and more into real estate. Like, I don't have to basically create another job like I did with the accounting and the tax stuff. I can actually invest into this asset and let it pay out over a certain period of time. Now, as most of us who have been landlords or owners of properties, that those returns fluctuate so much year to year, quarter to quarter, month to month. It depends on, you got HVAC that goes out, or you got to replace the roof. So there's just a lot more overhead and a lot more variables. And as an accountant, I don't like too many variables in my numbers, and that's why flipping doesn't really help. Like, doesn't really fit into my model of how I want to invest at all either. So the aspect of, okay, I can get the cash flow from the notes. I still have equity, because if I have to foreclose on the property, I don't want to do that either. I bought it at a point where, okay, I can sell it without doing any work and still get my money back and still get a good return on it as well. And I don't have the additional overhead of property taxes, insurance, repairs, maintenance, truly almost being the bank at that point. So once that, once I learned it, was okay, it just festered in my mind. Like, I gotta figure out a way to do this, and just start off with a little partial here, and then start to kind of take over some back end notes from people. Okay, I can start to kind of build to a point that let's take down some larger ones in the near future, and start to really snowball this thing.
Yeah, there you go. What are some of the things, I'll ask you this, what are some of the things that you like about real estate? You're like, man, this is something that you don't get with notes.
Well, the depreciation is the big thing. So a lot of people getting to real estate, or a lot of these syndications and funds of apartment buildings and whatever, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we can get good returns, but we can get you a good year one loss or year two loss possibly, but that's primarily due to depreciation, which is the recouping of the building value over a certain period of time. And then it exploded in 2017 with the tax changes, those tax changes that offer 100% bonus. So people got a lot of, like I've seen 7K figures in losses in year one, depending on the size of the property. But that's with the ownership of the property. Like, that's the only caveat about the note aspect, is like, you don't have depreciation, so you don't have that loss per se that you can use. You can still have other expenses from running the business, but you're just not going to have those huge swings from acquiring an actual tangible asset itself.
Yes,
that makes sense.
So I get this question. I'm sure Brett gets this question a lot. I hear it all the time, especially when people are making the transition from real estate into mortgage notes. 1031 exchange. Can I do that with mortgage notes?
I get that question quite a bit. Unfortunately, no.
No.
The actual aspect of like kind, when you're in the note space, you're dealing with paper. You can't just 1031 out of your duplex and then use those gains to buy a note from there. So it doesn't help from that standpoint.
What about a contract for deed? So if I buy a property and then I sell it to somebody on terms where I'm still holding the actual real estate and it's still in my name, and then I go ahead and I'm selling the contract for deed and essentially transferring the deed out, so I'm no longer having anything to do with it. I've had people ask me that question, and I always like the note question was always like hey, it's just you can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then they say, well, what about a contract for deed? Because I technically still own the real estate. And that's the one where I'm like, man, it seems to me like the answer would be no. But it seems like also there's like some, like, I don't know if there's, I don't know the tax code or anything like that. What does that look like?
So this is where I tell people, like, the legal stuff has to be in order. Like if the legal documents and the wording isn't right, the tax stuff doesn't really matter because everything's going to blow up on the legal. And so I like to work with people's attorneys on various matters, especially stuff like that, because people technically treat contract for deeds no different than seller financing. They try to carve it out a different way, but if you drill down to it, it's just you just seller financing the deed itself, or you're not taking the payments correctly in a way where, like, hey, is this truly you just collecting payments, as i.e. you're collecting rent?
Yeah.
Or are you using these payments to reduce their balance? And if you're doing that, which most people that do contract for deeds do, you're no longer, you can't really, the 1031 is not going to work because you're basically turned that into a seller financing and they're paying off the note while they're on it. So it's that aspect of, are they just doing more of a lease option, or like we're just giving out payments? You still, you're still in that aspect, still have ownership of the property, but they still have this option that they may or may not exercise in the future. So,
yeah.
But then at that point, you want to make sure you got enough time in place to give it 2-3 years per se, to let that lease don't have a quick option after a year or two, because the perception may be just you just sold it and you didn't really have a true like lease in place. So like I say, that's where like the legal side, making sure that verbiage is proper, to make sure we can stand the test of a legal lawsuit, as well as IRS coming in post as well.
Yeah. My dad's an attorney, and he always gave me this very technical way to look at this type of thing. He said, like, look, if it looks like a duck, it walks like a duck, and it talks like a duck, it's a duck. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. If you can just look at something and be like, hey man, I don't care what you're telling me, that's a duck, it's a duck.
Yeah.
So that sounds good. What you got, Brett?
I was going to ask some questions about, so as a note investor, and then also looking at other different avenues, I don't know, and this is why I'm asking you, because you don't have the same type of depreciation with mortgage debt, and you don't really have those big write-offs that you have there. Is this something that you would teach, like how to set up like maybe like a hybrid approach of, hey, maybe invest a certain portion of money into a syndication, maybe some into oil and gas because of the giant write-offs that you get there, maybe something into maybe some kind of fund, like is a mortgage note fund? Are the write-offs there? Like I was trying to understand, like, how could you paint a picture to not pay taxes but you're not going to get all the benefits of mortgage notes, but having it as an investment strategy as part of the pie. What would a good makeup of a pie look like?
Yeah, so my first experience with mortgage notes was as I said, June 2023 at DME. Great guys. Y'all probably was there, and I completely
was there.
Yeah, me and Mike were there. We had a booth. I might have met you. I think we did meet you.
Probably did. Yeah, I'm hard to miss.
I'm a big deal too.
I'm wearing this shirt. I'm the 6'2", 270 and a huge beard, so I'm typically easy to spot out in the crowd. But that aspect of when I learned it, and I hear people talking where like, hey, they just went and sold all their property and just went 100% in the notes, which I can understand from an investment standpoint because I was overly eager to do the exact same thing. But then the tax mind always creeps up on me for better or worse. Where like you need a good balance of both. Like you need tangible assets and you need like to actually help with the offsetting, but then it's having that conversation with the individual of their whole situation, because it's not just about the investments. It's about like what are you willing to put into a certain other investments in order to get those losses. For example, the short-term rental loophole that everyone was jumping into because you don't gotta be a real estate professional in order to use the losses off of your rental property to offset your other income. So the STR method became rather popular, but people didn't realize like what it takes to be an actual STR operator for at least 18 months to at least satisfy being a to address any potential IRS poking holes in your argument. So we got 6 of them, and I can't imagine myself being actively involved, getting calls at 2-3 o'clock in the morning because the guests can lock themselves out or the digital key code doesn't work anymore. So if you're willing to do that, the option is there. Then okay, are the losses that you're going to get outweigh that additional time that's going to be needed in order to qualify? That's why people more so are getting in, and that's where the syndication models, where people overpromise all these losses to all these investors who are doctors and lawyers or high net worth individuals, but they can't use the losses in year one because they're not real estate professionals. So like, hey, but what could actually be balancing out all of that? And oil and gas becomes one because the working interest stipulations there, where they can be able to use these losses without being actively involved, or just being materially participating in someone's active business that may not be considered as passive, like ATMs, RVs, stuff like that outside of real estate, where okay, you can invest into this business and potentially get a year one loss, but can you put enough time in as a limited but active partner per se in order to get the losses? So that's where the balancing aspect of it, especially with couples where one spouse doesn't work. All right, my focus is on that one non-working spouse, because we can actually get him or her enough hours to qualify for certain things, and then we can use these losses going forward or currently instead of having to roll them over in the future years.
So it sounds like you have to have. You threw a bunch at me there. So you were talking about the short-term rental stuff, that you have to put in enough hours to show that you're actively working to actually take advantage of those losses.
Yeah, so you just can't buy a short-term rental, get a property manager or a co-host, and you're not doing anything at all. And that's the whole material participation aspect of it. Like either you're putting in at least 500 hours without having to track anybody else's time, or you at least putting 100 hours in and more than anybody else at that point. So there's those two of many other parameters to actually prove material participation, but it's a lower bar to hurdle than real estate professional status, which is the whole 750 hours and more than half your work time.
Okay.
So a lot of people who are
you're saying if you have a spouse that's not working, you can get them on that.
Yeah.
And do you have to like document those hours? Do you have to you have to keep really?
Yep. And it's not filed with the tax return. It's just that if your card is pulled and they challenge you, part of their audit guidance is, do they have hours tracked to prove this, that they are actively involved with their short-term rental or real estate professional, and just scrambling trying to get your hours in. It's never going to be the year after you file. It's going to be 2, 3, 4 years later, and you haven't really been thinking about it. So trying to remember what you did that long ago isn't going to be helpful, because you're seeing more suspicious if you're taking a long time to provide them supporting documentation.
That's interesting. That's nice. I mean, how would someone track that? Like Excel? I mean,
Yeah.
what,
Yeah, Excel, Google Calendars, just time logs. Like we have a couple of time logs that we provide to clients, and they can use as convenient for them, or they may come up with something else. There's actually apps now to help people track their time, especially in the real estate real estate space. Can't think of the name of it at the moment right now, but there's options to do so, and it's the tedious little things like that. Whereas, okay, if you're willing to do it, the deductions are here. But it's like, yeah, it's a pain in the ass.
What does driving count? Does the drive time count? So, say I have I live in Orlando, Florida, and I have a piece of property that is up in the Panhandle, and it takes me 4.5 hours to get there. Does the drive time, the 4.5 hours there and the 4.5 hours back, does that count as part of that log?
Typically, no, because the general aspect of if you have a property 4 hours away, do you have a operational reason to be driving to that property? And most likely, if it's that far away, you're going to have someone else readily available, unless you can prove that like you had to get there because if this didn't get done, the property was going to go down. So like it's very rare that the hours count. Now the travel time is still deductible as an expense, your mileage, but just the driving doesn't. Most of the time, we're talking about actual property management hours, anything dealing with the people living in the property or the property building itself. Like if you're putting together IKEA furniture, or just communicating with guests or tenants from there, like those are the type of hours. Are you doing any construction, deconstruction of the property or in your real estate business? Like those are the type of hours that's really supported by it.
Man, 500 hours is a lot. I mean, if you got a lot of these things and you're trying to build this cash flow so you can live on the beach in Tahiti, it's
now. So the 500 is just one of many other ways to prove it. That's just one. But also, if you have multiple properties, there are certain elections you can make to group your hours together. So it could be 500 hours. If you got multiple short-term rentals, you can group those into one activity. So it's not 500 hours per property.
Interesting.
Just 500 collectively.
Yeah, I guess the interesting thing would be that. So you were saying with the oil and gases, and because I mean, the reason I asked that because I actually looked at those, and someone said it was like 500% write off like the first year. I was like, what? Like I guess that he said 100%. I was like, okay, but he was also selling it, so I don't know if he was trying to spin it in a special way. But
so that's. So 500%, I have to know what that particular deal is, because most of it that what you're getting written off is the drilling equipment itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that can be millions of dollars depending how big of an oil investment fund that you're investing into. So they're able to get these losses out to all their partners from there. Now. Not saying now we were at 100% bonus at 2022, and then we're at this now 60% in 2024. And unfortunately, as of 8/7/2024, it was on the plate on the Senate to be potentially 100% bonus coming back for another 2-3 years, but they declined it last week. So now last week. So now we're just going to wait and see what the election, whoever wins the election, what they plan on doing with this benefit that it drove a lot of business because a lot of people was putting a lot of money into real estate because they wanted these deductions.
Right.
Interesting.
I'm glad you segued into that because that's like right into my next question, was kind of revolving around the election. And, we'll kind of take politics off the table, but do you see, I mean, you said you've been doing this for close to, I guess, 2 decades now, doing it. So you've seen different administrations come through there. Do you see, whether it's blue or red or whatever, do the tax codes, do they change drastically? Does it become a huge difference on who gets into the office, or what's your thoughts or opinion on that? typically people say, Republicans are going to drop taxes, Democrats are going to raise taxes. Do you see that in the tax area, or is it something it's like it's not really there's not really huge swings? Or what's your opinion on that?
It depends on the candidate and like what they're typically push. Like and I tell people just take a historical look on each person, and I'm not telling people who like we go with Trump. He's a real estate person, so all of them tried to put some type of tax cut, or let's say tax relief type of program in place. Obviously, Trump, real estate person, a lot of that stuff went to real estate. Biden, he's more so into the green energy aspect of things. So a lot of his tax breaks went into EV vehicles or electric vehicles, green energy, stuff like that. So you really have to take a look back at the individual, see what they typically have pushed before, and then that's most likely what they're going to try to have to get passed when they reach office as well. So, and then a lot of it is and then the Congress becomes a big piece because like just make sure if it's bipartisan and getting them all on the same page. And that's what was the issue, because the House passed the 100% bonus back in January of 2024. And for 8 months, it just sat on the Senate's desk, and they just now saying no, and for whatever reason. But I think it's just more so just posturing to see who actually comes in office.
Right.
So it's interesting.
So it sounds like what you're saying is like, look, there's tax incentives kind of regardless of who gets in there, because they're either Trump pushing real estate, Biden was pushing the green. So you can kind of follow the tax benefits. Every administration is going to have some sort of tax benefits. They're like, here, it's going to kind of lean heavier on tech, or lean heavier in the green energy, or lean heavier in real estate, but it really just depends who's getting in there.
Yes.
That's interesting. Totally different segue. This is one that you hear Grant Cardone always, hyping on, and the more I looked into it, I was like, I don't know, Grant Cardone. He's always talking
Never
about.
heard of him.
He's talking about the. I'm always gonna screw it up. It's the tax code 167 something where you can get a G-Wagon and write it off. And, and I was like, I looked it all up. It's
because of the weight of
it's 6,000 pounds, and I was like, cool, because I was looking into it, and I was like, that is not true. I was like, you can't just get it. You know what I mean? It's like, I was like, you have to show that you drive that around and all this. And I was like, it's just, he takes that one little bit and he ran with it. And people are like, oh, how do I do this? And it's like, you can't.
Well,
your opinion would be valuable. I'd love to hear it.
Well, with Grant Cardone, it was the jet actually.
Oh, it was the jet. He did that one too.
It was the jet, like buy a $1.6 million jet or something and just write it all off. Now that particular code is more related to for business expenses that's ordinary and necessary to the business. So if your business requires a G-Wagon for necessary reasons because you're a TikToker, influencer, or whatever they're called these days, and you're constantly driving around and going to show properties or going into investor meets, and or you got an RV and you pull up at different events in your RV. And that's your means of traveling, but are you actually tracking the miles? Because just buying it and showing it all doesn't really mean anything, because it's a vehicle. Now we got what's the business versus personal mileage, and just because you bought in your business name, which is not ideal, but that doesn't make it a business expense, because you can have bought in your business name and then only been driving to Disney World with your kids and have no evidence of there being business use of it. So it's still that aspect of assuring that it is first and foremost, if it's a economic, like a financially smart decision for your business, especially if it's a startup, because that's who the ones end up buying it with startups, buying all these G-Wagons and all these huge vehicles. But can your business even support this? And you buying on debt, so you got this note, you got this this payment that you got to keep making, insurance, property tax is going to go up out the roof for you there. So is it a financially smart decision? And two, are you got the right evidence in place to actually get the tax deduction from it? And I bring the first thing first, because the tax deduction is a 1-year thing. Once that's gone, you still got to pay for this thing over and over again until you figure out what to do with it.
Right. Yeah. He was also talking about writing off. So the only car to buy is a G-Wagon. And you buy this Bentley because you can lease it and you can write off the lease each year too. And I'm like, why do you do
Well,
that?
I don't know where we're going to take our tax advice from Grant Cardone.
I'm not, but I'm just having to say that
whoever this guy is.
he says these things and I'm like, I'm gonna have to back up and see if that one's real. So yeah, I mean, the other one that I was wondering about that seems to be something that could be depreciation, but at a lower amount than getting rentals is doing the Turo thing. So I've seen that kind of come around in this space where people are doing, because technically those depreciating assets are cars.
Yeah.
But you could get these Turos and then, they rent out pretty good. I have a buddy who's in this mortgage note space and really he's always on the cutting edge of he's always, every time I talk to him, he's probably like, oh my gosh, because I just thought I was asking questions, but he's all on Turo now. And he's got a fleet of like 15 of these things. He's got property managers, but he's using that as also the depreciating value of the assets because they're cars. I don't know if you heard anything interesting about the Turo's side of things that are.
No, I mean, we have a few clients that are in the Turo space and were in the Turo space at one point. I think the big thing, a lot of them is it's the insurance that's their biggest expense. But yes, like we'll get the vehicle, and a lot of times because cars depreciate from a value standpoint so rapidly, they're unable to really sell them at a gain. If they or try to get rid of them at a gain, if they're done, so they don't have to worry about so they got limited risk when it comes to depreciation recapture on those vehicles. Right. But it's the aspect of pretty similar to like hiring employees. Like the more employees you have, the more deductions you have. Just more people you have to oversee. Same thing with the vehicles. The more vehicles you have, the more deductions that you have. But it's more vehicles that you have to oversee. Like it's really and that's where the cash flow quadrant kind of comes into play. But like with the biggest business, like that B quadrant, that's where okay, like can the business operate one without you? But like, hey, what systems are you putting in place? Like, are you hiring people? Are you buying the equipment to actually run your business more effectively? And that actually comes with the deductions as well, not just the additional cash flow come from building the business that way.
That's interesting. I love this. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah. So Larry, did you have something else?
No, I was going to say, well, I'd like to learn more about how people can find out about you. I mean, I was watching some YouTubes, but I mean, this is definitely something needed in this space. I mean, I'd love to get some information from you that we can put in our knowledge base because I do not give tax advice. He doesn't give tax. People ask us questions, but that's not our. We can't tell you that. But I could say, look, go to our knowledge base. There's a resource here. You can click on it. Can schedule a 15-minute conversation.
Are you taking on clients? Are nationwide? Is it a geographic area?
Yes, we're taking on qualified clients nationwide. We do go through an interview process where we just make sure it's a good fit for both sides. Because there's a lot of great tax advisor out there, and we're all kind of talking the same thing, but so it's more of a personal feel from that because I want to work with people that that doesn't mind a CPA that walks around in t-shirts and Crocs, and I'm fine with that.
Man, life is way too short to not work with people that you're good with, right? There's so many people out there. There's so many customers, and there's so many people that you can hire on to be your advisor or strategist. It's like, look, work with people you enjoy talking to. Work with people that you can get along with. I think. Well, I would say one of the things that really did come from the COVID and the lockdown is the casual wear just became so much more. I mean, I'm wearing, like you said, a lacrosse shirt into the office. Forgot we're going to be on a podcast, or at least we're a Paperstac t-shirt. But even so, it's like, you don't judge a book by its cover. It's like, hey, man, if you're comfortable with me, I'm comfortable with you. Some of the smartest people I know, you would know it. Really wealthy people, really super smart, and they're walking around in jeans and tennis shoes and a tucked in, shirt, and you're just like a t-shirt, and you're like, man, you couldn't tell me that guy is as smart and knows has as much money as he does. But it's like, hey, you don't judge that book by its cover. Work with people you like to work with.
I like that.
So how do people get in touch with you? How can we, I'm sure there's going to be people on this podcast or that listen to this, the 3 or 4 of them that listen, they're going to be interested and be like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for, especially somebody who knows the note space, because that important. Is to not only understand the note space, but actually be an investor in notes yourself. and be an accountant.
That's cool.
There's a lot of people who are like, hey, I need a note specific accountant. I need a note specific accountant. Even my accountant, which we've had for 12 years or 13. Well, wow. So I guess longer. They have about 13 years. When we got into it, he was like, man, I don't really understand your space. And of course, now he's been in it for a while with us and he understands it. But there's just, as much as there's a lot of people out there who are qualified CPAs, tax strategists, not a lot of them are actually really super familiar with the note space.
No.
And especially, you're talking about partials. So when you start wrapping all that stuff in there, I'd love to get some information so we can start funneling people towards you, and maybe they'll pass the interview process. You never know.
Well, it's in defense of other like tax advisors and CPAs. It took me a while to realize this because I was at that crossroads where we're all similar to doctors, not in the life-saving aspect of it. But as I put it, if you hurt your knee, you're not gonna go to a dentist.
Not going to a cardiologist.
both are doctors. Both are smart as hell, but one specializes in one thing, one specializes in another thing. Like, and that's how people need to see their advisors as well. Like, it's good to have someone. Like, I know people just try to go with the one-stop shop with everything. Where it's okay, you got your bookkeeper, tax filer, and tax advisor all in one. Like, if one person can do all that, great. I tried that and almost quit my firm because it's way too much to really build on. And I knew I did not want a large accounting firm. Like I've been in that world. It's okay. I could have been a partner. I didn't want to do it for a regional size firm. Like I want to be able to connect with my clients because I'm investing with them. So we're getting in deals together. Like I bought deals with clients. I sold deals to to clients. But I was completely transparent. Like, here's your tax hit if whatever we do here, but it doesn't change whether it's me or somebody else at that point. But I always want to be on the same side of the table with my clients because I'm trying to build cash flow and find my whatever financial freedom number as well.
Right. That's awesome, man. So
that's good.
How do we send people your way? What's the best way? I see you got a QR code.
Yeah. So they're watching. You have the QR code here. They'll take you to my page, www.larrypendletoncpa.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Larry Pendleton CPA. Try to keep it simple as much as possible. But yeah, like I try to get on as many podcasts and people that want to listen and try to share as much value as I can. And all this grow together.
Perfect, man. It's super close to was third base for the Braves, Terry Pendleton. So I saw that and I was like, oh, it's like Terry Pendleton, Larry Pendleton. So, okay, well, we're gonna, if you're good with it, we'll put the website in the show notes, and that way people can click on it there, or they can scan the QR code. And man, it's been awesome, Larry. I appreciate you coming on and letting us pick your brain. It's just tons of good information.
Yeah,
and like just questions that like I've always had rolling around in my head.
I know. That was good. That was real good.
Yep. I think the main thing for note investors is just to understand that the income that you're making is taxed less harshly than the W-2 that you have. And it's okay. So you're building that up in order to replace your main income generator, but it will be taxed less harshly. It's just applying different other strategies and other investments to help offset this new income that has not as much expenses or deductions to work off of. People want the immediate benefit now. It's like people know about, okay, I can invest out of my self-directed IRA or 401k and build it that way, but what can I use now? Well, just really first change your mindset, and then let's implement other investments as well. So that's why I like to leave people from a mortgage note investment standpoint with.
Perfect. How about a book? Any book that you'd say, here, you should read this next. This should be your next read.
Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. Just that aspect of finding the right people to put around you. You all hear about the aspect of building teams and getting everybody on the bus, but just getting them in the right seats on what they're great at doing and using your greatness to leverage their greatness and doing something great together.
I've heard about that book. So someone else was talking about that changed their entire business and took them to like an 8-figure because of Dan Sullivan's abilities to scale businesses. This was, I guess he did it a couple of years ago. Because what is it? Strategic coaching. That's who Dan Sullivan or the strategic coaching. Yeah.
Cool.
Now, this is cool. And last question before we let you go. You had just recently, and I couldn't make it, was the 3 ways to the wealthy creatively maximize their 401ks. Are you going to be doing that again, or is there a recording somewhere people can view?
So I'm working on doing like more stuff like that. So like that, whoever registers for that, like even if they wasn't there, they'll get the recording if they registered for the link. But I'm looking to do more, try to put more content out there. Next one, I'm gonna be working with a
Everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah,
this is a great one. We will have all the contact information in the show notes. Reach out to Larry Pendleton, CPA, if you need help, tax strategist, especially in the note world. So we will catch you on the next episode of the Paperstac Podcast.
See ya.